Hey everybody, it's Mighty Monday. Woo, woo. Shout out to Jesus. I'm here with Robert. He's the youth director at Elevate Life Church, and he's going to share his testimony. I don't know him that much, but I know every time he preaches, he's got my attention. I know he's been through some stuff. So I was excited to have him join us. So he's going to share his testimony right now. It's a good time to tag somebody and share, give somebody hope. Amen? All right, you guys, God bless you.
Hi, everybody. I want to say thank you to Denise for opening up her ministry to me. This is quite an honor. I've been watching the other people testify, and I'm inspired every single time. But that's what I want you to be today. I want you to be inspired. As she said, my name is Robbie. We are the youth directors, my wife and I, Cherie. My wife Cherie and I are the youth directors here at Elevate Life Church. We love the young people. We just give them Jesus. That's what I want you to have today. That's what I want you to take away from this. I know that testimonies usually kind of always start off the same. Testimonies are usually when I was a little kid and then I went through some stuff, but God. But I want you to know that right off the bat. Today, who stands before you as somebody who's delivered, somebody who's tasted hell and all that it has to offer, and yet it never satisfied me. And the only thing that put me where I'm supposed to be is God. The only thing that allowed me to actually feel true happiness, true peace, is Jesus. And so that's who stands before you today. Somebody who has made it, somebody who has been delivered and who will continue. Like, I've been marked for life. How could I ever go back after what I've experienced with God? But I do want to tell you my story. So I want you to be encouraged today, knowing that who stands before you was about as bad as it could get. But who stands before you today is somebody of peace, somebody who's able to love in a way that they ought not to be able to love, somebody who knows Jesus personally. I know him as a lot of different things because he's been a lot of different things in my life. So when I was young, grew up in a wonderful household. My mom and dad, they were a great couple. Never saw them fight. They were wonderful. They worked everything out, really loving, touchy-feely all the time, and that was cool. And I thought that that's what a marriage was supposed to look like. And I always thought that because that was my upbringing up until, about 6 or 7 years old, I always thought that I didn't really have a testimony. See, I never got into drugs. I never got into alcohol. I had a bunch of older cousins that acted pretty stupid. And I always saw how when they would act stupid, I always said, I don't want anything to do with that. So I've never actually had a sip of alcohol. I've never tasted any type of, done any type of drug at all. And I always thought that was a disadvantage for me because, I don't really have a testimony, but I actually do. There's a lot of people who may think, well, because I've never been addicted to something hard, that I can't share my story with people. No. See, I started off as somebody who had everything. I started off as somebody who had a great example of a marriage in their own home. I started off on the east side of town, which is the good side. I started off as somebody that was privileged in a lot of ways. At about 7 years old, my dad decided to leave. And so from 7 years old on, 6 or 7 years old, he didn't leave, he abandoned us. There's a big difference. When you leave on whatever type of terms, but there's still reconciliation that's able to happen. I was abandoned. It's a big difference. I was somebody in need, somebody who lived and believed that they weren't worth much because of living under this thing of abandonment for so long. And so this abandonment thing showed its way and it showed its face in a lot of different weird ways. I played football when my dad was around, so about 6 or 7 years old. Up until then, I had done karate. And all I ever wanted to do was play baseball. I loved baseball. I was terrible at it. But all I ever wanted to do was play baseball. And so when my dad left, I said, I'm going to stick it to the man, and I'm just going to play baseball. And so I did. And so my first practice, I remember going, and all the dads are there with their young kids, and they're all playing catch, and they're all there for their sons. We didn't have any females on the team. They're all there for their sons, and I had my mom. I was the only one. And so they're playing catch. They're good. They're having a great old time, and I have my mom. And it was cool. It was okay, but it was a little wound, just a little cut, just a little something. I go and I play football a couple years later. And all the night prior to our first day in pads, all the night prior, we're struggling to try and figure out how to put the pads in. You got your hip pads, your thigh pads, your butt pads, your tailbone pad, all these different things. They all go in a certain place. I came to practice. Everyone's fully ready to go, and I have no idea what I'm doing. This is prior to internet, by the way. Shout out to the old generation. Things that a father should be able to teach you. I didn't have that in my life. I go to my 8th grade graduation, and I don't have a tie on, and I should be sharply dressed. So there I am panicking in the bathroom, and my PE teacher comes and steps in. Now see, all throughout my sports career, I had my mom. Whenever I would do something spectacular on the field, she would be on the fence, screaming, going crazy. She would be leading the cheers. She was a great support when I needed it, but she wasn't my dad. When I had my college, I was a very good athlete once upon a time, and ended up going to college and stuff like that. And I had recruiting trips, and I would go to the different college campuses, and my mom was with me right there, hand in hand. And it was wonderful because I had that support, but she wasn't my dad. And all I ever wanted was validation from my dad. All I ever thought was, you left because I wasn't a good enough son. Now I have an older brother, I have an older sister, and I had a baby sister. My baby sister was born with complications, and she passed at almost 2 years old. I was about 4 years old at the time. And I always say that that's my mom's story. My mom, over the course of 4 years, or I should say even about 2 years. Yeah, not 4 years, 2 years. She lost my baby sister, so she lost her daughter. My grandma died, which was her mom. Her grandma died, which was my great-grandma. And then my dad left, all over the course of 2 years. And so I always praise my mom. Man, my mom's so strong. She's been through so much, not knowing that that's actually my story. My mom went through it because she lost a daughter, but I lost a sister. My mom went through it because she lost her husband, but I lost my father. I lost my grandma and my great-grandma. So I've been through these things, and I've been mad at God, and I've been angry with him and saying, I thought that you said that you're the Prince of Peace. Why am I in so much chaos? I thought that you said that you're the father to the fatherless. Why do I feel so lonely? I thought that you said you're a good God. Why are all these bad things happening to me? So I was angry at God. But as I got a little bit older, those little wounds that I talked about, the reason I mentioned the mom playing catch with me instead of my dad was because that was a little wound, and it just stayed wounded for a while. And then with the pads, it was a little wound, and it never healed. And the tie, little things like, what's the big deal about that? It's just a tie. Buddy, anybody could tie a tie. Not when you're lacking in one area of your life. And so these little wounds, as I'm a kid growing older, they end up becoming full-blown anger. And when the anger isn't satisfied, it turns into violence, and I become a very, very, very violent person as I get older. I'm somebody who has hurt people physically, and when people talking about being washed in the blood, I was dipped in the blood because I made that blood touch my own hands. And when people talk about, I have a past and I've been through things. No, I've done it all. I was as violent as they come. I was as angry as they come. And it's all because of these little unresolved things. And so as I get older, I realize that it's unhealthy to be angry all the time. It's unhealthy to be violent. It's unhealthy. Like I said, I've hurt many people. It's unhealthy. And so I do my best to allow forgiveness to take over. I was in ministry my entire life. And I remember that I would make excuses. In being angry with God, in seeing all the different things that my mom went through, I saw her have a story a lot like David's. One day she's flying high, and the next day she's angry, and she's wounded, and she's saying, why have you forsaken me, my God? I saw all of that, and I felt all of that. And so as she's going through the different motions, angry with God, one thing that she never stopped doing was putting me in the presence. I would say, Mama, I have homework, as though it mattered. And she would say, cool, bring your homework to church. I'm going to put you in the presence. Mama, I'm tired. I haven't slept, or something's going on with me. She says, cool, come sleep under the pew. You're going to be in the presence no matter what. And that's one thing my mom always did, was she always had me in the presence. Whether she was going through whatever she was going through, whether she was doubting God or angry at God, she always put me in the presence. So that's all I knew was presence. And I walked away on my own. I walked away knowing better. I walked away and I tried to go as far as I could, knowing what the actual solution was. So as I get older, I figure out that I don't want to be angry anymore. And so, I go to the altar all the time, and I'm doing my best to forgive my dad at my home, and I'm doing my best to forgive him at the conferences, and I'm having these come to Jesus moments, I think. And then Father's Day comes around and I'm still blubbering mess. Tough guy, angry guy, college athlete, all these different, tough as they come, a blubbering mess every single Father's Day. Because that's always a wound that was always a wound that was never taken care of. It was never dealt with. And so most of the time I'm okay, but there's still incomplete, the work is incomplete in my life. And so most of the time I'm fine, but these little reminders always pop up. And so I make up my mind, like, I don't want to be that anymore, and I just can't get free from it. And it's a process. And because of this spirit of abandonment that I was living with so long, it's a heavy spirit. First of all, if you've ever been abandoned, you know what I'm talking about. But this abandonment thing actually caused me to mistreat. I was wounded, then I was angry, then I was violent. But it actually caused me to wound a lot of people that were near me and that loved me. These little girlfriends that I had once upon a time before I met my wife, I mistreated them. I mistreated them really, really bad because I was afraid of being wounded. And the reason I would do that is because as long as I could be in control of whatever situation I was in, I would never, ever run the risk of being wounded again. I would never, ever run the risk of being abandoned again. And so as long as I was in control, so I would allow people to get close to me, or just as close as I wanted them to. And then when things would start getting real, or when there would be a little bit of conflict, I'd just cut them off. Didn't matter how close I was to them. Didn't matter how much I wanted to be around them, how much I enjoyed their company, how much they allowed me to feel happiness for that moment. I would cut them off as though I never cared in the first place. So long as I could be in control, I could never get wounded again. I could never be hurt again. I could never be abandoned. I didn't only do this with little girlfriends. I didn't only do this with friends. I did this with family members. I would cut them off and say, well, you know what? You were never for me anyways. And it's okay for me to be without my blood relative because all it was I was wounded. And so I would go to God for forgiveness for thinking that way, but the work just wasn't done. Why wasn't it done? Honestly, I couldn't tell you. I don't know why, other than I enjoyed being wounded. I was able to justify my actions in being terrible by saying, well, it's because that's what my dad taught me. See, because what my dad taught me is that if you don't like your wife, if you're sick of your wife, you could just trade her in for a newer model. People upgrade their cars. My dad upgraded for a 20-year newer model. That's what he taught me and showed me was okay. That was the curse that he gave me. You're supposed to pass on things of work ethic and all these good things to your sons, but that's what he taught me is if you're sick of your wife, go ahead, just leave her. No big deal. Walk out on your kids. Let them struggle. Let them be poor. Let them do whatever. That's what he taught me. So at about 20 years old, mind you, this happened when I was about 7 or 8, 6 or 7, I should say. And so for about 13 years, I lived wounded. And at 20 years old, while serving God the whole time, I just decide I want Jesus and nothing else. And it's weird the way it happened. What caused that to happen was I was in my mom's backyard and I wanted to make some ribs. And I had this nice little grill that I had bought and I had used plenty of times before. And I had my charcoal because, gas is cool, but it's nothing like charcoal. Nothing like that nice, wood that you put on top of the charcoal that's smoking and just gives you, They were going to write stories of these ribs. It was going to be in the magazines. It was going to be the ribs of all ribs. One problem, I couldn't light my charcoal. So weird. I stack it the right way. I know how to do this. I'm a man by now. Been through it all. When I was little, I would say that it seemed like all the fathers wanted me as their son, but my own dad didn't want me at all. But I've gotten over that. I've tried to forgive. I'm okay most of the time. So I'm ready for these ribs. I'm ready for them to be incredible, and I can't light it. No problem. I'll adjust. Get the lighter fluid. Use the whole bottle. They won't light. They're not wet. They just won't light. Okay, rubbing alcohol, gasoline. I kid you not. I tried everything on these charcoal briquettes. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Fire couldn't light these charcoal briquettes. And I'm frustrated, and it's been about 2 hours, and I just break. And my ribs are all, by the way, they're all rotten because they were ready to go on, but they're all rotten by this time because they've been in the sun for the past 2 hours. It's 1,000,000 degrees outside, and I've used every type of flammable possible, but I just can't get them to light. And I finally break down. And I don't have a foul mouth now. I didn't have a foul mouth then. I don't, I believe truly in the power of my words. And I've never, even when I was like away from God, I never ever used foul language. But what I start dropping is F-bombs towards these charcoal briquettes. If these effing charcoal brick. And what it was is I start saying things that I wasn't even in control of. I said, if I effing had a dad that would have effing taught me how to do this, then I would have been able to make these ribs. And if I effing this and this and that, and I'm cussing these things out. This is in my mama's backyard at 20 years old. My mom's standing at the window just looking at me. Literally, I remember her like just looking at me like, what the heck is going on? But she knew that something was happening. And I melted like a puddle of, like the Wicked Witch when she gets water poured on her. I just melted, and a deep hurt and a deep cry. Now I've cried many tears. I've been in this deep pain for many times, and I've released it. I thought, but I'm melting here, and I'm crying, and it's an ugly cry. The kind of, like I can't catch my breath crying. And God, what he was doing was, I believe that he was ripping every single disappointment, every single wound. He was stitching it up, and it was painful. It hurt while he was doing it, and I felt my heart being torn out of me. But in Ezekiel, he says, I'll give you a new heart. The heart that's hardened, the heart that's full of stone, I'll make it into a heart of flesh. And I believe that that's exactly what he did in that moment. So I'm cussing, and then I'm crying, and all this weird stuff is happening. My ribs are rotten, and it's hot, and I'm all sunburnt, and I got bottles of lighter fluid, and I'm not embellishing. This is a real story. And I met Jesus for the first time right then and there. Now, I'd been ministering, I'd been playing drums since I was 10 years old, 11 years old, whatever, 9 years old, I think. I've been playing drums, I've been ministering, I've traveled everywhere by this time. I've had crazy doors open to me, but I didn't know who Jesus was. And I met him and his love and his forgiveness and his comfort for the first time ever at 20 years old. And it happened over some ribs, over some charcoal that couldn't light. And so it's like beautiful. For the first time ever, the sky was blue, the grass was green, like I was able to breathe without any weight on my chest because I met forgiveness. Why was I holding on to that for so long? I enjoyed being wounded. I enjoyed hurting other people because if they could feel what I feel, I'm okay with that. Why should I be doing all these good, all this? Why should I be trying to help people when I'm in deep pain? I enjoyed being wounded. And so God did a complete work in my life in that area. And see, a lot of times I think what happens is God does a work in our life, and he does it completely. He does not make any mistakes. He doesn't leave anything out, but he does it in one area. And so now that area is whole, it's time to move on to the next area. Well, because I had been living under that abandonment for so long because of those ways of thinking that I wasn't good enough, I allowed, and let me preface it by also saying this. Whenever I formed soul ties with somebody, whenever I was in a sexual relationship with somebody, I allowed them to treat me however it was that they wanted to, because it was something that was difficult to break. And if you're in a sexual relationship with somebody right now, you have a soul tie. Somebody that's not your spouse, you have a soul tie. And so I allowed whatever type of treatment towards me. I had one person specifically that I was with for about 6 years. And this person had many times been unfaithful to me, and I knew about it, and it was found out in the worst way possible. And I said, oh, but you know what? You're just having a bad day. You're just having a bad week. You're just having a bad month. You're just having a bad year, a bad life. I ran out of excuses. And it's beautiful. Why I'm telling this story is because the day that I disconnected from my sinful past, I met my future. I'll explain it. I used to minister everywhere. I played drums a little bit. Some of you guys know that. And like I said, many doors opened. And my team that I was a part of, the previous ministry, we traveled everywhere, man. We did it all. We played the stadiums. We played the small places. We did it all. But I was at a conference of about 500 women, and it was a conference that we played at, quite a few times, and it was about 500 women this year, and it was in 2009. And 2009, I was still in this relationship with this person. The conference was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Sunday you left early, but Friday all day, Saturday all day, and then Sunday be on your way to church. Friday night, I get a phone call from the person that I was in a relationship with, and they were extremely intoxicated. And they explained to me that, one of their friends came home from the military, and she welcomed him home. And so she was unfaithful in that moment. Now, mind you, it had been many times before too. But then a group of people got together and they did something extremely disgusting. A big group of people. And she's explaining this to me while she's intoxicated. This is on Friday night, while I'm ministering at a conference at about 3 a.m. So technically it's Saturday morning. And she says, why do you still love me? And I took a quick inventory of the example of love that I had young, the example of love, having known Jesus and his forgiveness at this point. And I said, you know what? This is not what love is. I don't love you. And I'm going to hang up and you're never going to hear from me again. And so I did. And I cut ties with her. That was at 3 a.m. on Friday. Immediately, I rolled off of my bed. I'm in a hotel room with some of my teammates. And immediately, I roll off the side of my bed. And I drop to my knees and I'm crying out to God. And it's a deep hurt. Not like when I met Jesus in his forgiveness. But it was a deep hurt. And I said, I want somebody that's going to be faithful. But I want somebody that's going to love you more than I love you. I want somebody that's going to be an example to me in how to love properly. I want somebody that's pure, even though I'm filthy. In my young life, I've left a lot of pieces out, but I was filthy. When it came to other people, that was my addiction. When it came to other females, that was my addiction. Been there, done that with everybody. And I'm filthy, and I know I don't deserve it, but I want somebody that's going to be pure. I want somebody that's going to lead me to you when I turn my head and go the wrong direction. And it's this beautiful moment, and I fall asleep and have the best sleep ever, and then we minister all day long. But in the middle of that day of ministry, at about noon, I see this group of people that are walking towards me, and I make this awkward eye contact, and I make this ugly face at this person. The person just goes, what the heck? They just go about their business. We minister the whole day, and at about 10 or 11 p.m., mind you, about 500 women. There's a bunch of women, about 100 women on the floor. I'm on a balcony, and there's a person laying on their stomach. They happen to look back up at the balcony, and I make another ugly face at the exact same person that I made at the ugly face at before. Person looks, goes, the heck is your problem? That's my wife. The day that I cut my sinful life off is the day that I met my wife. I cut off my old life at 3 a.m, and at about 9 hours later, at about noon, I make an ugly face at the woman who becomes my wife. God is faithful. Now listen, I wasn't looking for a wife. I was hurt. I was wounded. But what's crazy is that we end up spending talking throughout the whole night. We sat in a little hallway, and it's pretty cool. It's where we got engaged. It's a really cool story. But we end up talking throughout the whole night, and during this night, God is actually like revealing himself to me, showing things about who becomes my wife, Cherie, to her. And I'm like telling her all her business. She's telling me all her business. And I'm just telling her how sad I am because I had this terrible girlfriend that was terrible towards me. And she's just like, well, why were you with her? Honestly, I don't know. And I don't want anything to do with her. I don't want anything to do because I'm just wounded. But what's crazy is that About 4 months later, we start dating, and the rest is history. Here we are, married about 8 years. But what's crazy is that she ends up telling me that in 2008, remember this was 2009, September 19th, 2009. I don't remember the date specifically. But in 2008, we played the same conference. She was there. She saw me setting up my drums facing the opposite direction. And she said that she audibly heard God say, "That's your husband." What's crazy about how God works is if she would have came up to me in 2008 and said, "You're my husband, I'm supposed to be with you," I would have said, "You're crazy, woman. I got a girlfriend. She's terrible towards me, but I got a girlfriend. And I'm not going to let this terrible thing fall out of my hands. Future, the best thing that's ever going to happen to me? No way. God's timing is perfect." I want you to be encouraged by these things, because if you're in deep pain, God is a restorer. Now, I can tell you this, my dad has never apologized to me. But God so did a work. He's never apologized for leaving. He doesn't even think that he's wrong. In fact, he's justified it many different ways in saying, "This is why I did it." Never sorry for doing it, but this is why I did it. I made the right choice. Been married 4 or 5 times since. Many kids since. But I'm saying that to say that if you're in deep pain, if you're living under abandonment, let Jesus become who it is that you need. You don't have to hurt people. You don't have to always be in control. He did it for me, and he will do it for you. I know that for certain. If you're living under the idea that you're not good enough or you're the reason why someone else made a decision, stop thinking like that. What God has done was allowed me, and I pursued my dad, mind you. I also pursued my dad. I was pretty angry with him, but I pursued him for 18 years. After he left, 18 years, I pursued him. And I would call him, and he wouldn't answer. And I would go after him, and he wouldn't respond. And I would call him, monthly. Then it turned a little less and a little less and a little less. And then it's just on his birthday and Father's Day. But one Father's Day, when I was 28 years old, like I said, left when I was about 6 or 7. I was close to him for a little while, and then I hated him. And so at about 10 years old, though, that's when I started pursuing him again. So on Father's Day, I call him and he answers. I said, "Dad, I miss you. I love you, and I want to see you." And he said, "Me too, son. I miss you." That was about the first time that I talked with him in almost 15 years, but I had pursued him for 18 with no response, with no remorse, with no anything. He just completely cut off. I just knew that I needed my daddy. Remember I told you the story of my mom. I just knew that I needed my daddy. I'm old enough to be a dad now, but I still need my dad. But I'm happy to say that everything that was lost all the time, that's been restored. I have a beautiful relationship with my dad now. It doesn't hurt anymore. All I know is that it doesn't hurt anymore. I know that God so did a work when I met Jesus and his forgiveness that I don't look for him to say sorry. I'm not angry with him. I'm not hurt with him. That's my dad, and I love him. And I have a beautiful relationship with him now, and I talk with him pretty often, whether it's through Facebook or even just on the phone. We talk hours and hours and hours. We share a lot of the same interests. And he's at retirement age now. And I'm the only one that has a relationship with him. He's got like 11 kids, but I'm the only one with a relationship with him because God so did a work in me and in my life that I don't look for any type of anything other than my dad and his love. That could be you too. God did it for me, and he'll do it for you. Now, what the things that I left out in my testimony are, I did sleep on the floor for about 2 years. I have been wounded by many people. I've been taken advantage of while I was asleep by somebody that I trusted and that I love. People in church have wounded me. Churches have wounded me. Pastors have wounded me. People have hurt me all throughout the way. My mom, who smells like Jesus herself, is a stage 4 cancer patient. And I was angry with God, and I was so mad, saying, "How could you do this to her? That's all I've ever had." Those are the things I left out. You know why? Because God has so done a work in my life that none of that even matters. I've been so forgiven for the things that I've done that it's easy for me now to live in forgiveness and allow forgiveness to take place in my life for people that have also wronged me. Guys, if you're wounded, go to Jesus. You can know him. He can do this for you too. And I want you to be encouraged today. I want you to know that there's a God in heaven that loves you, and he's passionate about you, and he wants to see you blessed, and he wants to see you healthy and whole. Remember, I started this whole thing by saying, who stands before you today, who sits before you staring into a phone on Mighty Monday is somebody who is forgiven and who is healthy in every area of their life because Jesus has so done a work in me. Guys, that could be you too. I want you to be blessed by this. And if you don't know Jesus, call out to him. The Bible says that you need to do two things in order to be saved. They're very simple. Romans 10, it says this. You got to believe with your heart and confess with your mouth that Jesus died and rose again on the third day. So however it is that you know how to do it, call out to Jesus. Believe it with your heart and call it out with your mouth and say, Jesus, save me. I want to know your forgiveness. I want to know your love. I want you to be who you've been in Robbie's life. But guess what? He's not going to be who he's been in my life. He's going to be better because that's who he is. Acts chapter 3 says this thing. Why it doesn't hurt anymore for me is because I believe that this is what happened. Acts chapter 3 verse 19 says this. Repent and repent and allow the sins of your past to be blotted out. Repent and call out to God, and the sins of your past will be blotted out. And after that, the times of refreshing will come. Guys, at 34 years old, oops, I said my age. I've never told anybody how old I am. I always just say I'm advanced in age. At 34 years old, though, I've been marked for life. I've spent my entire young life giving people Jesus, and for the rest of my life, I will give people Jesus because he's so done a work in me. All that hurt, all that pain, it was blotted out. I don't even know what it looks like anymore. I don't know what it feels like anymore because it's been blotted out. It could be the same thing for you. I love you guys. Be blessed. Once again, Mama Denise, I'm so honored that you've asked me to be here. And guys, I love you. Call out to Jesus. If you don't have the answers, call out to Jesus. He's got you. He'll take care of you. Be blessed.